And now we move on to Dr. Rashri ji. She is going to present on Abhinav Gupta's aesthetic approach, awareness as Ananda.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. My salutations to the Guru Shishya Parampara, from Brahma Vishnu Maheshwara to Bharata Muni to Abhinav Gupta Padacharya, to my Guru, respected, revered Dr. Padma Subramaniam, my other teachers, Dr. Jayashree Rajagopalan, Srimati Leela Gopalan, Dr. Godavari Mishra, and all those from whom I have learned something or the other in this life, my pranams to you. At the outset, I would like to thank Professor Nagraj Paturi, my senior at Hyderabad Central University, and Shri Hari Kiranji for giving me this opportunity to present a paper on Abhinav Gupta, and also to give us this opportunity to collaborate with them for this conference. At the outset, Srinivasji, if you can share the screen, please. At the outset, I would also like to say that there are many terms which are used with reference to Abhinav Gupta, but I will not be going into all the details. I'll be just picking up one or two aspects which lead us to the final point of awareness as Ananda. Most of the Sanskrit terms which we use in Hindu aesthetics are non-translatable. The English versions are only approximations, and so I think all of us are aware what they mean, even though we have to make do with the English approximations for our talks and lectures. Coming to the talk itself, we have, next slide please. We have, next slide. There are about 5 aspects. Next slide. This paper seeks to explore the aesthetic approach of the polyglot Shaiva philosopher from 11th century Kashmir, Acharya Abhinava Gupta, who will be referred to as Abhinava hereafter, whose philosophical underpinnings help transverse the entire range from the mundane empirical to the sublime trans-empirical. The content and method adopted for this is starting with a descriptive, finally to analytical, and then we have an evaluative aspect of Abhinav Gupta's contribution. My presentation will cover 5 aspects briefly: the life and works of Abhinav Gupta, Abhinava's approach to aesthetics, his approach to Shaiva Darshana, the Shaivite underpinnings of Abhinava's aesthetics, which is awareness as Ananda, and finally, an evaluation, the relevance of his analysis to Hindu aesthetics. Next slide, please. We have here the range of teachers and the subjects they taught. Before I go into the life of Abhinav Gupta, a very brief note about him. Many people think he had a very charmed life and that everything was there for him for asking, but it is not so. His parents were completely immersed in the Shiva Shakti principle. He is also known as Yogini Bhu, but he lost his mother when he was extremely young. And soon after, though he learned under his father, Narasimha Gupta, his father took up sannyas. So effectively, we can say that Abhinava is that one philosopher who is completely molded by his gurus, to the extent that scholars opine that the name Abhinava Gupta is not his original name. It was given to him by his gurus themselves, who found him the fountainhead or the source of new ideas constantly coming into play. So this is the list of the different teachers that he learned under. I would also like to say that he took lessons or came under the tutelage of both the Avaidika and the Vaidika systems. By Avaidika, I mean those which do not accept the Vedas as Shabda Pramana, which is the Charavaka, the Bauddha and the Jaina. And he also went under the Vaidika teachers, that is your Nyaya Vaisheshika, Sankhya Yoga, and Purva and Uttara Mimamsa, also known as Vedanta. So his entire range was huge, diverse, but what is very unique and special about him is, one, he never forgot his teachers. He never forgot that he had learned so much, as he claimed, standing on the shoulders of those who came before him. I think that is the first quality that we have to all learn with reference to awareness, the first quality of gratitude. I have known several people who have made claims to being very creative and unique. They may be so, but it is our bounden duty to give give credit to where it belongs, and that is one lesson that we all have to learn from Abhinava. The second aspect is whenever he quoted or he mentioned any of these systems, even though he did not finally end up in them, he was very authentic. He always maintained fidelity to that system. He mentioned all of them in the Purva Paksha to his works, and that is why Abhinava is relevant till today as far as the Guru Shishya Parampara is concerned. Next slide, please. When we are talking about the Shaiva tradition that Abhinava followed, we can categorize his works into three aspects. One is the Tantrika, and the Tantrika, which is including different Shaiva cults, which I'll mention now. The Alankarika, the Dhvani and Rasa theories, because he wrote two major works as commentaries. One was the Abhinava Bharati, which was on Bharata's Natya Shastra, and the other was the Lochana, which was on Dhvanya Loka of Anandavardhana. The Pratyabhigya school is just one of the three which come under Trika, the other two being Kaula and Krama. These three form what is known as the Trika schools. He was, besides these three, also greatly influenced by the Spanda school on one hand and by the Sphota theory of Bhartrihari. So this, in brief, is all the influences at his time. It is also important to note that he came at a time in history when there were very divergent viewpoints. There were a lot of people fighting for attention as far as the philosophical followers were concerned. It was also just at that point in history when post Abhinavagupta, there were a lot of invasions. So he was in a sense in that cusp. And I think because of his contribution, we can talk about pre-Abhinava and post-Abhinavagupta with reference not only to aesthetics, to a wide range of subjects that he dabbled in. Next slide, please. When we talk about his works, especially, next slide, please. Yes, with reference to Shaiva Darshana. Pratyabhigya Darshana is not exactly the easiest philosophical system to follow. There are many aspects with great depth, but I'll just pick up two or three which are very relevant for his aesthetics. We have this concept of Prakasha Vimarsha. All of us who are familiar with the philosophical systems and the traditions in India know the concept of Brahman. Brahman who is self-luminous. That is technically the meaning of Prakasha. But Vimarsha is a very unique concept because it means not just self-luminous, but it means self-conscious. So the concept of knowledge is inbuilt into the concept of Prakasha and Vimarsha, and Abhinava has discussed it in great detail. The other concept is, of course, of Shiva Shakti Samarasya. Very often we feel that the ultimate reality is someone who is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. But when we take an Advaitic standpoint, it is possible to deny activity at that stage. But as we know, Abhinava was greatly influenced by the Sankhya system, because he not only took the 24 evolutes of Sankhya, but he also included some more and made them into the 36 tattvas. In Sankhya, we have the concept of the Prakriti and the Purusha, where Prakriti is supposed to be the active principle, but non-scient, whereas Purusha is supposed to be the sentient principle, which is goading Prakriti to act. Here, he takes that influence of Sankhya, but puts them both together and calls it as a Shiva Shakti Samarasya, where the knowledge and activity is in one and the same principle. And we'll realize how important this aspect is, because when we are talking about aesthetics, when we talk about dramatic presentation, both of it are integral components. We have the concept of Bimba Pratibimba Vada, which is the reflection or manifestation of the ultimate reality in the world. But that world is Swatantriya. That is, it has its own independence. Similarly, when he talks about the art world, he says that the art world has a kind of a sovereignty. It is autonomous. It has got its own rules and regulations, even though it is a manifestation of the world outside, what the dramatist creates. Even then, it has its own rules and regulations, and it is unique. So there is this application of Swatantriyavada, which is actually his Shaiva Darshana concept, to the field of aesthetics as well. he talks about Shiva Leela. This becomes important. When we ask the question, why does an artist create? There's a lot of talk about creativity and a lot of people who put forward theories of creativity. Finally, when we ask the question, why does an artist create? The simplest answer would be because he wants to. And that is Shiva Leela, complete freedom. So the Swatantriya concept is not only with reference to the Jagat which has been created, but to the will of Shiva himself. It is free play. He creates the world in the form of spanda or vibration, and that is the free will of Shiva which is being exhibited as the world. So also the free will of the artist which is being exhibited in his artwork, unless of course they are commissioned artworks or done under duress. We know there is a lot of such instances in history as well. He has done a great analysis of the concept of Vak. The Paravak, Parapashyanti Madhyama Vaikari. We had two great scholars who spoke about this in the beginning. Here we find that the states of consciousness and the states that he talks about with reference to Vak are in a sense going together. And this becomes important because finally when he analyzes these aspects with reference to the Abhinava Bharati, he talks about Vachika Abhinaya as not that which is just put forth or what is brought forth in the form of dialogues or music, but something that starts from within the essence of the artist. So that is why the fourfold classification of Paravak becomes very important with reference to Abhinava's aesthetics. The concept of the 36 tattvas, which have been shown as a parallel to the 36 chapters of the Natya Shastra, is actually the doctrine of evolution. So there is Kriya at every level. Every level, the activity has been accepted as part and parcel of being Shiva. We come now to this concept of Pratyabhigya, epistemic recognition of the metaphysical reality. What does that mean? The word cognition is of one particular level, perception of a particular level. It is actually recognition. We tell that word so quickly as recognition, we forget what is the combination of the two words in that. Recognizing what? Recognizing that which is our essence, which means we carry a certain number of vasanas through the birth, the series of births that we undergo. And these vasanas are latent, dormant in our minds. And when we see a wonderful performance, a wonderful natya which is being staged, that becomes the trigger for that vasana to come to the forefront and become a participative experience for the spectator. So Pratyabhigya actually here is the epistemic recognition of a metaphysical reality of which all of us are a part, but we are often unaware. So again, epistemic meaning the knowledge component, and recognition here of the reality meaning the ontological aspect. As I said, for Abhinava, both are not separate, they go together. We have then the refinement of mental constructs, which he calls as Vikalpa Samskaras. There are so many samskaras which we carry birth after birth, but these samskaras have to be modified, they have to be refined. And this refinement process is possible if we are able to constantly keep in mind the Purusharthas which have been given as the objectives or the aims of human existence. As Dr. Padma mentioned earlier, Artha and Kama have to be regulated by Dharma, then only they can lead to moksha. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yes. Abhinava's approach to aesthetics. Now, how do we apply all these aspects that he has mentioned with reference to Pratyabhigya Shaivism to his aesthetic theories? We start first with the pre-Abhinava theories. As is very well known, we have the influence of Bhattalolata, Sri Shankuka, Bhattanayaka, and others. And we see that they have moved from just the performer to the spectator over a period of centuries. He accepts Kavya as being the starting point of all aesthetic expression. Pratibha is a term that he uses and uses it in a very fine sense. There are two different theories which have often been spoken to in Sanskrit literature, and that is the Prachina theory and the Navina theory. One theory which believes that the external elements, components have a lot of influence on the individual, and the other which believes that it is the nurture, that is, which is within the nature, which is within the individual, which comes out in the form of poetic genius. So Pratibha we can refer to as an approximation of poetic genius. Now this concept is very popular in psychology in the West, which is your nature and nurture, and this has been discussed in great detail by Abhinava earlier. Sadharinikarana, as was mentioned by the learned speakers before, it is a kind of a commonality of experience. When a particular dramatic presentation is being performed, how is it that so many people are able to enjoy it at the same time? That is because when it is being performed by an actor, at that particular point, he is gone beyond the limitations of time and space and causality, whereby it has, because of that leaving off of the limitation, it becomes a universal feeling, a common feeling. That is called as Sadharinikarana, which was made very popular by Bhattanayaka. And he says it is a person of a similar heart, of an empathetic heart, whom he calls a Sahridaya, in the audience, who would be able to enjoy this particular performance. Now, again, I have already mentioned about the tattvas of Shaivism. It is believed that Abhinava interpreted the Abhinava Bharati, keeping in mind the 36 tattvas of Shaivism, but there is also a 37th chapter. In fact, there are certain versions available with a 37th chapter, which we believe is his emphasis on the concept of Anuttara, which is the ultimate, which is actually the concept of Shiva Shakti Samarasya. Again, we know that the Ashtarasa complex put forward, or the structure put forward by Bharata, was expanded to include just one more, which is Shantarasa as Maharasa. He stopped with that. He did not believe in the multiplicity of bhavas and rasas thereafter. And there has been a lot of debate as to whether Shantarasa can be included or not. We'll have to keep that for a different session. But what is important to note here is, for him, Shantarasa is not just something which comes as the end product of a given presentation. It is that which we begin with, go through with it, and have it as the end as well. That is why he calls it as a Maharasa. In a sense, he sees it as a substratum for every performance. He talks in great detail about the vignas, and this becomes important because if we want to have an effective realization, that is Rasananda, there are a lot of obstacles for that. He talks about the vignas which are experienced by the actors themselves, vignas which are experienced by the spectators. He analyzes them and also gives possible solutions for that. We have here the concept of Siddhi. Often it is wondered whether Rasa, Siddhi, Ananda, or are all these three terms the same? Why is it that we have three different terms? The very fact that we have three different terms implies that they have different contextual meanings. When we are talking about the 11 limbs of Natya, that is Rasa, Bhava, Abhinaya, Dharmi, Vritti, Pravritti, the entire list when we're talking about it, we find that Rasa comes at one point and Siddhi comes at a later point. So till we have the Vibhava, Anubhava, Vyabhichari Bhava, Sthayi Bhava, it is all within the domain of the performer. From there on, it leads to Rasa. When we talk about the concept of Siddhi, it is, we discuss it with reference to two different aspects, that is your Manushya Siddhi and Daivika Siddhi. When we are watching a wonderful performance, then sometimes we automatically and spontaneously react by either clapping or saying wah or sabash. And in today's language, maybe the youngsters will say wow or awesome. But then when we talk about Daivika Siddhi, it is when we are watching a performance, say for example of my Guru Paduka, I have seen so many people sitting in the audience completely stunned and they are just crying. They are not able to even express anything. When we are listening to, say, M.S. Amma singing her Kurayundrumillai, we really feel there is no Kurai at all. There is nothing that we should complain because there is so much of bliss in just listening to that. That is referred to as Daivika Siddhi. But Ananda is something entirely different. Next slide, please. All these, in a sense, lead to Ananda. Next slide, please. Yes. Some of these concepts I'll just very briefly touch upon due to paucity of time. Sadharinikarana, Sahridaya, and Pratibha is what he had already inherited from his earlier, from the earlier theorists. We have some other concepts. For example, Sphurana. Sphurana is some kind of a vibration. As we are aware, he was on one hand very influenced by the Sphota theory of Bhartrihari, which is talking with reference to Vak, and he was also influenced by the Spanda school. So he says that there is a certain kind of vibration within, and that vibration is what is expressed in the form of a dramatic presentation. This vibration takes a certain nama and rupa. And this is experienced by everybody because it spreads across the spectators in the form of Tanmayi Bhavana. And this creates a sense of wonderment. Wonderment is not the only explanation for the word chamatkara. It's a very deep term and it needs more analysis, but it is some kind of a wondrous expression where the entire thing is realized in a flash, in a kind of recognition of that essence. When we are listening to very divine music, when you're watching a beautiful performance or even enjoying a painting, we find that we want to keep that moment still. We don't want to move away from that. We don't even realize how much of time we have spent in listening to it or watching it. That moment is when we are in our deepest essence. So the recognition or the pratyabhigya, which that particular dramatic presentation or that particular music or dance creates in us, is helping us revisit what is our actual essence. And that is possible when Shantarasa is achieved in any given performance. He has taken a cue from Anandavardhana when he quotes Mahabharata. He says Mahabharata is a story which is filled with so much of cries of war and all the gory details that go with it. But finally, the entire exercise is being carried out in order for good to be established over evil. Therefore, for Shanta or Shanti to result in. So even Mahabharata is taken for that particular example. We come to this, excuse me, we come to this concept of Rasananda, which he also refers to as Brahmananda Sahodara. Many people have this doubt as to why it is called Sahodara. Why don't we just say Brahmananda? That is because Brahmananda is actually at a different level, but Rasananda is when we have a glimpse of that Brahmananda. And it is so beautiful that we want to go to it again and again. That is why Natya becomes a Yajna. It is where our negative emotions are completely worked out of our system and we are still serene, tranquil, and Shanta. And this all is possible because it is actually a Leela of Shiva. So he has great faith in putting forward the concept of Purushartha. Ultimately, what is the Purushartha? If each ashrama, each varna follows the Purushartha, then there is Rita and Satya in the world. And when there is Rita and Satya, there is harmony. There is peace. That is what finally we are looking for when we talk with reference to Ananda. No person gets up in the morning and says, I want to be unhappy today. I mean, if somebody does, there's something fundamentally wrong with that person. Each one of us is born and we grow and we want to grow as happy beings. And that is why Ananda is the automatic endpoint of what we call as human existence. Very often we are not realizing that, but that is really the endpoint. And that's a welcome change from many of the Western philosophies which start with sin and unfortunately end probably with suicide or murder. Because the world is around, it's Gokulam, where you start, you come back. So if we start with Purnam, or we start with Ananda, we are going to end with Ananda as well. So that is the recognition of our essential self, where we realize that Shiva is not only Chit, not only Sat, he is Ananda as well. And that is attainable with reference to the aesthetic situation. So he gives some very interesting examples with reference to his Shaiva Darshana. He talks about what is known as the Mayuranda, that is the egg of the peacock. When we look at the egg of the peacock, it is just white and round and it's not at all attractive. But what beautiful colors come out of that. That is how the world is created. The beautiful colors of the plumage which come out of that dull looking egg. So all that creativity, all that capacity is there within us. So the Ananda is becoming aware of that capacity which is there within us, which a very beautiful Natya performance can give us. Some of the one or two other examples which he uses before I conclude. One is the Alata Chakra, and that is when we have all played when we were young with this thing in our hand and rushing against the rushing against the wind, where the wind wheel keeps going round and round. Similarly, the Alata Chatra, when we put it round and round, we don't realize they're actually different parts. Our lives seem very piecemeal. They seem made into so many different pieces, but actually it is one whole. So what Abhinava is trying to say is that Ananda is the awareness that there is a holistic approach to life. If we see the whole, these small pieces will cease to matter. They will not occupy, they will not take up our memory bytes in today's language. We will be so engrossed in understanding and being aware of that whole, which in his case is being Shiva, that we will be able to also deal or improve our transactions with the rest of the world. He even uses the phrase of the rays of the sun and the sun. They are not different from each other, but we always say rays of the sun, just to clarify from where it is coming. But for the sun itself, the rays are part of it. So the awareness is that to understand the whole and not be taken away by the piecemeal existence that we are going through. And it is important to note the word rasa. It is actually a different way of saying Sara. What is the essence of our existence? Recognition, becoming aware of the essence of our existence. That is going to lead to Rasa, and the Rasananda is going to finally lead to Brahmananda. It is a Sahodara, because we are still limited individuals in a particular Deha, a Deha which has to be trained constantly. For an artist especially, like my guru says, constantly trained through the Anga, Upanga, Pratyanga, all these trained to become the perfect artist. But when you're on stage, you forget that you are performing. So the Ahankara is lost, and what remains is the dance alone. So this particular aspect of Abhinava's aesthetics is what is known as awareness as Ananda. And I would just like to complete with the next slide, which is a pen picture of his disciple. Next slide, please. Yes. Before we come to the pen picture, this is the evaluation that we have of Abhinava as a Shaivacharya. He was anointed as the Shaivacharya among all the Shaiva sects north of India. Actually, there is no term, from what I know, in any of the texts of Kashmir Shaivism. It is a term used by the writer J.C. Chatterjee in 1919 for a book that he produced then, and then it has come into popular usage. All those traditions which were Shaiva north of India accepted Abhinava as the ultimate Shaivacharya. The only difference that I see between the Shaivism which is practiced up north and the Shaiva Siddhanta which is practiced in the south is that the northern variation is one which continues to hold on to the Advaitic concept, that's the non-dualistic, whereas Shaiva Siddhanta prefers the Dvaitic or the pluralistic approach. When we are talking about him as a commentator, there is a criticism that he has not been original in as far as aesthetics is concerned. His two greatest works are commentaries on two greater works before that. But I can assure you that you cannot read both those great original works without Abhinava. So just as Abhinava needs Natyashastra and Dhvanyaloka, both those texts need him as a kind of a torchlight, as a kind of a light to illuminate what is being told in the text. And he gives his own beautiful additions to it, but from the point of the Shaiva Darshana. He was obviously an artist, there's no doubt about it. As my guru often says, that only an artist will know how a Karana can be reconstructed from just the verses which are there in the Natyashastra. And he was a Siddha. This Siddha is slightly different from the two Siddhis that I mentioned earlier. He was a Siddha because he was completely untouched by what was happening around him, but he was very much in the world. And as we know, he was an Ananda Yogi who was able to help us understand that by becoming aware of our inner essence, we can find Ananda within ourselves and Ananda in the world as well. Finally, I have the pen picture. Next slide, please, which is put forward by his disciple, Madhuraja Yogin. It was a beautiful set of verses which he had written, and this has been made into a picture. It shows actually a lot of animation in the picture itself. There's so much happening. There is music, there is dance. There are two dhutis. In fact, the dhutis are the female messengers are holding actually pots of wine. They're using citrus. There is flower. There is music. And we can see, I think, probably Shemaraja sitting there and writing down all that Abhinava has to say. He is himself playing the veena. So it is one animated show going on. And there is in the center Abhinava in his own Ananda. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. This is from a philosophy graduate. So definitely all the philosophical depth has been carried out very well. For the benefit of those in the audience who do not know these distinctions, let me tell you that there are two opposing theories in philosophy epistemologically. One is the innate knowledge theory, the other is empirical knowledge theory, empiricism. So this Abhinavagupta comes from naturalism, rationalism, where it is believed that there is everything innate. So Ananda, bliss that we talk about, is already there in you. You are just becoming aware of that. Is Abhinavagupta's position and his entire Pratyabhijna school's position, recognition school's position. And the opposing school from the Nyaya Mimamsa side is that it is empirical, it is being derived, it is bhojya, it is bhukti, it is anumiti, it is inference, it comes from outside, and all that. So these differences of how Ananda is already there in you, you have it, just be aware of it, is what is presented by Abhinavagupta. This whole conference is dedicated to him, to Abhinavagupta, the tallest figure in our aesthetic tradition. So thank you very much, ma'am, for bringing a paper to this conference to the great Acharya Pada, to whom this conference is dedicated.